here, because yeah, it's not going to be easy.
It is not going to be easy, but I'm sure that those demons are starting to make a little bit of a sound. Those Katowice demons that have been haunting this man over the last few years. Let's see if he can silence them once and for all. In the top right side of Hecate, we are looking at the main base of Team Liquid's Clem.
And spawning over in the bottom left here as our blue Protoss wants a finalist here. Finalist in many, many championships. It is none other than Stats.
Second PvT that we get to see over here on the main stream. Earlier today we saw Trigger, who came in with a, I would say, variety of build orders. Even if Game 1 and Game 2 looked similar, they were not similar at all. The 2-gate Blink into a third base is a night and day different build than the 4-gate Blink Stalker, where you stay on 2 bases for a whole lot longer. Then of course in Game 3 we saw a Stargate. I have the feeling that Stats is probably going to be a Stargate boy today. Now, I only saw a little bit of that Oliveira series as we were obviously casting and watching other games as well. And I did see him play Blink on Oceanborn, the game that he won. But Clem is incredibly good against 4-gate Blink Stalker. He has played against it time and time and time again. And he has made some very fine adjustments over time where it's like, all right, used to do a triple mine drop. He's like, no, I can't really do that. Then it's the double mine drop, but then sometimes he was a bit too in the dark. And eventually kind of settled for one Hellion into a single mine. And a single mine drop, it may seem underwhelming, because what are you going to do with a single mine drop? But if the Protoss is just out and about on the map in your face with all the units, if you show up with that single mine at 1 medevac, you unload it, you burrow, unburrow, you retarget, and I truly believe that Clem is the very best in the business when it comes to getting value out of Widow Mine drops. A single mine can truly pick you apart. We actually have a bit of a spicy start here, Ben, as the eBay block is going to be the opening here for Clem. It's going to force Stats. Stats did not want to pull probes, Chronobus out of settled. Stats will just say, like, I'm just going to take the third. Recently, I played a lot of game myself where this happened, and I took the third. I got obliterated by something. I don't remember the details. Someone in chat said, I feel like I never see a Protoss win if they're forced to take the third as the natural. And I thought about it. I was like, well, that's obviously not true, right? Because sometimes you win. But it does seem that this pretty much always goes terribly wrong for the Protoss. Whether they lose probes in the main or whether they lose probes in the third. And because Stats built that second pylon in his natural, the third pylon is going to be late. You need a shield battery here ASAP. If he does not have a battery by the time those Cyclones are here, this game could be over at minute 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, the way that this started, you're totally right. It was kind of interesting. I mean, this Adept could be a little bit annoying, could potentially slow down that CC a little bit, and I think it will do just that. I like the shade away by him already to get on out of there. Oh, in fact, he's going to stick around, maybe?
But then you lose it to the Cyclones, though.
Exactly, exactly. I don't think that's really what you want to be doing. We'll get the SCV, so at least he got something out of it, but you need every unit you can get out of this, and I love how Clem did his SCV scout initially, by the way. He didn't send it down the normal path. He sent it out a little bit earlier to circumvent a probe scout. So then he immediately got the engineering bay block up without it being spotted.
This spells disaster for Stats. Well, Stats knows it, so he goes double battery. I do like that. He goes Oracle, by the way. That's pretty well, because Oracles are not very good in the straight-up fight. It may actually be a play for Clem to send these Cyclones into the natural, because there's only a single pylon there and there is no shield battery. But yeah, getting these pylons near this bunker, Adepts are not that good against Cyclones. Adepts are terrible against the bunker. What is that Oracle going to do? Are you just going to send it to the other side of the map and hope you can kill a bunch of SCVs? But if Clem just keeps on building Cyclones, which is what he's currently doing, Stats is in all sorts of trouble, and this is honestly, to me, starting to look like potential game-ending damage already.
I think it is, Kev. He's not, and I mean, number 3 and 4 are going to turn up very soon, and here they are. I think this is going to be one of the fastest games that we've had so far in the main stage, and it is not going to get better before it gets worse, and GG. Wowie wow.
4 minutes and 8 seconds is all it takes for Clem to pick up game number 1. Couple of mistakes there by Stats, obviously. You lose the Adept, you say it. As a Protoss, you don't have a lot of units in the early game. A lot of your units have way more HP than the units of Zerg or Terran, but you don't have many units. So if you lose one of them, you already lose like 33% of your army. By the time those first 2 Cyclones show up, the bunker made it extra annoying. I don't know if an Oracle is the right choice there, and if it is the right choice, then that Oracle needs to fly to the other side of the map, and it needs to just gun down as many SCVs as possible, because an Oracle cannot battle Cyclones. Cyclones are just incredibly good against flying units in low numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, like just to mention how this game started off, just these small things that Clem did this game. He waited until that probe showed up on the other side of the map, went with the engineering bay block when there wasn't a probe there, and then Stats, he goes down, he's like, yeah, I'm going to take a Nexus now, right? And it's like, no, you absolutely can't. And then he has to build a pylon there, goes over to the third, and then Clem being a little sneaky sneak, went and put that bunker at the back there, just cementing his position. Even keeping the SV alive over there too, could repair those cyclones for days as well. Just nice play out of Clem.
Yep, and if you guys wonder what should Stats have done different, even if you go Stargate, it can be annoying, but Stalkers are just far superior units in these scenarios than Adepts. Stalkers have more range, Stalkers have more damage output, and Stalkers have more HP. So a Stalker can actually just stand there near a battery and fire a shot at the Cyclone, disengage, can fire shots at bunkers and disengage. Like with 3 Stalkers and let's say a Phoenix, you're totally fine there. Like you can absolutely, your economy is a bit disrupted and it's not going to flow as well as you would like to, but you will definitely not die. Stalkers do not die there. And I know he had one, and that one did die, but that's also because you don't have any other Stalkers there. The Adepts, they didn't do anything, and that was, of course, a micro error on the side of Stats. You're not supposed to lose your only Stalker there. Even if you have batteries nearby, you still need to be on top of the fact that your batteries have energy. You might have to overcharge it if you're afraid that the damage of the Cyclones is too high. And you can't make any mistakes against this kid in this matchup.
No, I mean, I didn't even see an overcharge used there either.
No, he didn't.
The thing is, even if you do overcharge, the Cyclones just pull back to where that bunker was and you're still in worlds of trouble and getting out the right units. He just wasn't able to at all. I didn't even check the Nexus energy, whether he was lacking it for the overcharge, but we're going to start loading up the second game now, which will be on Oceanborn. And after that kind of opening, well, in Stats' mind, it's like, well, that was about the worst thing that could happen. And hopefully, getting back into it, he's going to feel, at least letting the nerves settle a little bit, right?
This guy in Twitch chat was right, man. Nobody ever wins if you take your third.
He was right the whole time.
In the bottom right side of Oceanborn, we are looking at the main base of the Frenchman, the guy that everyone is talking about, taking the 1-0 lead. Team Liquid's Clem.
And spawning over in top left, the blue Protoss, it is Stats.
Might look at that game and be like, yeah, you know what, maybe Stargate is not the play against Clem, I'm just gonna go Twilight. I don't think he really lost that because he went Stargate, he lost because of the way that we moved our Adepts, the way we lost our Stalker, and then maybe that Oracle choice was questionable, and then on top of that what we did with the Oracle. So I wouldn't hate it if he's really confident with Stargate that he wants to do that again. But I kind of think like he had some success with the Twilight Council on this map against Oliveira. And if you can have success against Oliveira, you should be able to have some success with it against Clem as well.
I mean, getting a success against Clem, he's had so much practice against these very aggressive Protosses, right? Like, he talked about it in a recent interview. He goes up against Hero very frequently, goes up against Max Backs very frequently too, and they are some of the absolute, in fact, both of them are pretty much the best Blink Stalkers, right? So Stats, if you know that, and he's obviously done a little bit of homework with this group being 4 Terrans, you have to kind of take a page out of their book and see what they're doing, but most of the time, Clem is just looking so damn strong in this matchup.
Yep. A little while ago he looked invincible and it was just 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. Lately he's actually been dropping more series against some of those Protoss players and he's been winning. So he's been far from untouchable, but those are of course minor online tournaments. And I know Clem. And some people think that they don't take it that serious. That's not the case. Clem is not going to sign up for a tournament, play for 4 hours and then not do his best in the finals. Like anybody who believes that in my eyes is crazy, but it is still a different ballgame. On LAN, obviously more pressure, nerves will come into play. And if you do have 1 or 2 things that you truly believe in, these are the moments that you bust it out. But those losses, they still mean something. It shows that it is possible, because Clem is not going to play for 4.5 hours to then not want to win the grand finals. That does not exist.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Clem has absolutely kind of grabbed the weeklies as his own kind of thing these days, and having the kind of guys that he has to tango with in them is really cool. Already a very different open.
It'll be a Hellion drop here.
You think it will be a Hellion drop? I mean,
yeah.
That is a prime location for a starport if I've ever seen one. Does have the reactor already online, starport coming off over here. And so far, Clem, he's just saying, I'm gonna immediately throw everything that I have at you and just throw you off guard. And so far, a very different build at Stats as well.
And this is actually very sad for Stats, because last game he went for those Adepts, right? And that was not really the moment to build Adepts. This game he's like, yeah, you know what, I don't believe in Adepts, I'm just gonna go for Stalkers. But this actually is a moment where you really want an Adept. Imagine if there is one Adept here that's shading into the main base of Clem. Alright, Depot gets raised, but what you will see is a factory with a very quick reactor connected to it, and then you can still keep that Adept around long enough to figure out, hey, is it Cyclones or is it Hellions? Now Stats does not know, and if you really don't know that you're playing against a Hellion drop, this could just be terrible, incredibly quick. I'm actually kind of concerned here for Stats, because he doesn't know that a 4 Hellion drop is coming. And I've seen Clem do this build quite a few times. The shield battery is not even going to save you. We do have one battery on the production tab. I'd love to see where that one is being built. It is in the natural, but obviously... Oh, okay, he does know that. That's interesting. Can we take a look at Stats' point of view real quick? What did he see? I am surprised that... Alright.
Barely anything. Like, this is a...
Insane soul read.
A giga forehead read, yeah. Like, this is absolutely insane. And he's here to greet it, but that does not mean the damage will not be done. And he's kind of prioritizing the medevac, which I actually like out of him. Yeah, and he's probably still going to lose a good 11 or so probes here, but I gotta say, that is a pretty big deal. This could have been a lot worse for him.
Yeah, it's still kind of bad, though. If we go for the full wall-off and we are about as ready as we could have been ready and we lose 8 probes, you're right, it could have been worse. We could have lost 14, sometimes 16, and then it's absolutely game over. This is not something that I think Stats is very happy with. On the other hand, he has some potential right now. He doesn't have to worry about any follow-up aggression. You can ignore those 2 Hellions, by the way. They're chilling right now on the top side of the map. And there have been a couple of Protoss players that then they warp in Stalkers on the other side of the map. Those 2 low HP Hellions show up. If they drive into the main, they can still kill additional workers. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, with those 4 Hellions, maybe the tank production is a tiny bit later. And maybe Stats can find some success. And let's be honest, he needs success because at the moment it's 2 base against 2 base. 40 workers against 41. Not where you want to be as a Protoss. That's an incredibly quick Templar Archives, by the way.
It's incredibly quick, actually. He's almost like shifting a gear out of it. And those 2 Hellions you talked about, first shot's pretty juicy. Second shot, just a couple more probes going down 3. I mean, that's value for Clem, because that's what you hope to get out of those last 2. But Clem, he was so damn ready for an attack coming his way. I think he started, salvaging the bunkers, realizing, all right, you're kind of macroing out of this, and let's see what you can do with that. And Clem's, they're both making a lot of good reads out of one another.
Yep, that tank is in a good spot. 4 Stalkers still going to go for it, though. 4 Stalkers is the magical number. Oh, no, that's a double lock, and this War Prism is in trouble, and I think the Prism will go down. It is a nightmare best of 3 for Stats so far. Game 1 was over before it began. And here in Game 2, he takes a lot of damage after a magical soul read where he had temporary full wall off. But he still lost 8 probes. You're like, okay, that's rough. You lose 3 more. It becomes very rough. It's like, now it's my time, right, to deal damage. And Clem says, nope, there is no such thing as your time. This entire best of 3 is my time. And well, now we can talk about potential great storms landing, Ben.
I mean, this is just a series of unfortunate events, quite literally. And, you know, he's boosting that storm out, getting the charge online. 3rd base later than a Terrans as well. I mean, it's just disastrous. I like the fact that he's going for something a bit crazy, because again, if you're put in that position where it's like, you know, everything's gone terrible, you have to do something a little bit wild to get yourself back in it.
Yeah, but Clem is also thinking about that, and that's why he's building a missile turret right now in the natural. He's like, well, what can I still lose to if I'm this far behind? Most of the time the answer is DTs, so why not make your life a bit easier against DTs? That is not going to be the play off Stats. There is that Templar Archives with Storm. Storm is ready, but even if the Storms are massive, like, you're gonna soften up Marauders, but you don't really kill them. You need something else that's strong, that can kind of stand their ground and fight, like an Immortal or 2 or a Colossus. And we don't really have that. The only thing that you can hope for right now is, I guess, that a couple of Storms obliterate every single Marine, and then you have some sick Zealot engagement. But StarCraft II is a numbers game quite often, and the numbers are just so far in favor of of Clem, that I'm not even sure if the best possible Storms can save Stats over here. And the cool thing as well is that Clem is not even moving out with everything. So now Stats is going to still be forced to drop a couple Storms, and then Clem can just pick up, leave, keep his units safe, and he's enjoying a far superior economy.
And that was a really big scan for Clem as well. He got to see that the 3rd base is indeed later than his. He got to see the Warp Prism there, which, you know, you don't know what's necessarily in it, but you got to see the High Templar sitting at the 3rd base as well. And when you see no Robotech really online in that army, you have to know exactly what's up, don't you? And I think Clem's just doing everything right. Ghost Sky Academy coming online as well.
I'm gonna get a Storm drop in the natural. That's kind of cool. You don't see Storm drops ultra often. He unloads them very early. The Storm drops pretty big. I mean, that's 12 SCVs. And now Clem is probably thinking like, huh, okay, I'm gonna have to step it up a little bit. Let's see if Clem can find some success with his double Widow Mine drop and a crazy amount of defensive mines. So he's not gonna get a move by Zealots, but it is important now for Clem, obviously, that he does do something with that massive advantage that he created for himself. As a Widow Mine is gonna burrow on the high ground, but there aren't too many probes to kill there. The one in the main has way more potential.
It certainly does, and I think retargeting went on 6 probes going down. So for every little bit of damage that Stats did with those storms, well, Clem got it right back done. And remember, he's wounded from earlier as well. And now, I like the fact that he's sprinkled in these Vikings as well, by the way, because that really hinders this Warp Prism's ability to be there.
It might seem silly to go Disruptors here because you already have like High Templars with Storm and you don't need double splash damage. But I kind of think that I would like a Disruptor more than I like a Colossus, because you mentioned those Vikings that Clem is already building. These Colossus are not going to have any armor upgrades for a long time. The tank count is still there. In a weird way, I think I would have preferred a Disruptor because we need a Hail Mary play. And that Storm drop in the natural was cool, but it's just that Clem dealt a lot of economic damage early. So if you kill 10 probes over 30 probe economy, that's a monstrous amount. Killing 12 SCVs of a Terran on 60 SCVs, yeah, it's kind of annoying for Clem, but he's building 3 SCVs at a time. He's going to recover from that in no time. And I don't know if Colossus is the ultimate comeback unit.
I'll tell you what, though, from how bad this game did look, like the 8, 11 probes going down earlier on into losing your Warp Prism without doing much at all. Now I look at this, and this could be one of those games where it's like, oh, it looks fairly normalish. Like, obviously the Terran's ahead, but all things said and done, Stats is still somewhat alive. I'm just so scared for his army comp. He's morphing in like Archons over here, and there's already a good like 6 ghosts on the field. Like, this army, +1 weapons on air coming online already.
Yeah, this is building a Stargate. Maybe he just wants to sit back forever and make a quick transition into carriers. But I mean, if you're, what would you like to see out of Stats then, Ben?
Like out of that Stargate, you mean? Or
out of everything. What is the army comp that you think he should be heading towards?
Honestly, it's going to be really tricky. Like, with Clem's army comp that he has here, this is just good against everything that you can make as a Protoss player. This, right now, I think spread High Templars, going full old school Hasselhoff style, with them scattering across the map. Maybe even just trying to get some army on the map as well, just to slow down Clem, because he needs time, right? Like, Clem is maxed out right now. The time is not on your side unless you delay. I kind of feel like Tempest could also be a little bit of a play just to keep him away from you and really use the storms and AoE that you have to just keep him at bay.
All right, we are going to drop 1 storm from the high ground, and a forward blink is going to soften up some of these Vikings. Stats triple Stargate Fleet Beacon. That is a monster investment. What I'm incredibly concerned for Stats is that the army may look big, but we're about to look at 2-2 Terran against the Protoss with +1 attack, no armor upgrades. So you have EMPs, Vikings, and 2-2 Bio. As Stats does find a tank there, as Clem left the tank behind. Couple of Zealots distracting him. I mean, all things considered, it's impressive that Stats is making a game out of this, but this is one of these games and one of these moments where I can hear the voice of Todd in the back of my mind. Look at the supply, you look at it, you're like, the supply doesn't lie. I was like, I think it kind of lies right now, because Clem has a way more powerful army.
I tell you what, though, everything that you just asked me, like, what should Clats be doing, or Stats be doing, like, what would I be scared of? It's kind of this, like, just sprinkling out High Templars, really slowing down the game a bit, and just getting stuff done. And the fact is, he's now equal on supply. He's actually got up to this carrier tank now, like 3 carriers, that is nothing to scoff at. You're absolutely right, because the upgrades are not looking good, but with the amount of splash that he has, all it does take is 1 bad fight to go on.
Yes, Clem is in late game god though in TVP.
I mean, his micro is insane when it comes to these fights. It really is.
And almost every Protoss will feel that playing as Clem is a nightmare, but you can get the job done. But you get the job done early, when he's on 3 bases, maybe while he's trying to go up to 4 bases. A lot of these top tier Protoss players, and MaxPac said it as well, it's like, you don't want to play Clem if he gets a 5-base setup, because at that point, the very best don't know what to do. I mean, Stats believes in the carriers here, and he does have very quick air upgrades, so that's pretty awesome. But Clem is not even really slacking in that department. And yeah, could Clem have closed this out earlier? Absolutely. Could he have gone pedal to the metal and just rally everything to the other side of the map, eat a storm or two to the face and then close out the game? Most likely. But this is not a bad place for Clem to be in at all. If you would ask him before the game started, hey, 30 minutes in, do you want to be maxed out, be ahead in upgrades, and head into Mass Viking, Liberated with good arrow upgrades? Clem will take that any day of the week against every single Protoss on the planet, because no one plays out these scenarios better than he does.
No, certainly not. That is still a scary Protoss army. It's a lot of Vikings. EMPs are good. The Time Warp is pretty decent as well. We'll be able to pick off quite a few of these Vikings before they get too much done against the carriers. Storm's decent as well here, Kev. This isn't looking so bad for stats, honestly. That is quite a defense by the Korean here.
That was with battery overcharge and that mothership tanking a lot of shots from those Vikings. That was pretty decent. I don't know if it was a victory, because he did lose some expensive units as well, and he's now just trying to build carriers. And carriers can be awesome if you're mining more than the Terran. As we have triple observer over there in a row in the bottom left side. That should probably spread those bad boys out a little bit. Carriers are sick if the Terran is kind of broke. But Clem is not broke at all, and Clem is soon going to produce 6 Vikings at a time, 8 Vikings at a time, and then it becomes so hard to get good fights with your carriers.
I'm just a little bit of a believer here, Kev. Like, I looked at this game, 6 minutes in, I'm like, okay, Stats is kind of dead, right? And then 9 minutes in, okay, Clem's definitely far ahead. Now I look at it, I'm like, I absolutely see a world where he is more than back in this. 4 upgrades on the go at a time, so he's going to start catching back up on upgrades. Carry count's getting really scary. He's going to have 2-1 on them as well.
I mean, it looks good for Stats, all things considered how it started, but I still think that as long as Stats is not on top of the production of Clem, to think that Clem is in trouble would always be a mistake, because he's incredibly good with Ghost, Bio, 3-3, Viking, Liberator. Really, no one does it better than Clem, and I think Clem also got rid of some of the Marauders, because he was very heavy on the Marauders, but if Stats is just sitting there with carriers, like this may actually be one of the better opportunities that Stats has, right? Where Clem is still working on his Viking count, working on his Liberator count, but he's not quite there yet. The longer it goes, I actually think the better it gets for Clem again, because he's so incredibly good in these late game scenarios.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of kiting with these Vikings against this kind of army, right? Like, those Vikings, they don't want to let all those interceptors out. He doesn't want to take a direct engagement where he can't run away. And right now, Clem, going to go for a little bit of a drop in the north here, going to start denying bases, but Stats is on 5 bases now. He's gearing up for a 6th as well, which will most likely be halted by Clem, but Clem's resources are continuously kept low. He's also on 2 armories himself. He's getting a lot of CCs, getting more nukes online. This is turning into a hyper late game here.
Yeah, it's actually very cool, right? I didn't think that we were going to get here. We know, obviously, Stats' reputation. We spoke about it. One of the best defensive Protoss players of all time. As Clem has unloaded a lot of buy units in the top right, but the entire army of Stats is here, and this is not a fight that I think Clem really wants to take. Sick EMPs, though, on the Archons. Observer dies. 2 out of 3 Archons fall. All 3 Archons, in the end, do manage to go down. Stats may kill this base, and he will clean up this army, but it was obviously just a small part of Clem's army.
Oh, the Storms, though, will keep those Vikings at bay, and one Storm dealing that much damage, it may not look like a hell of a lot, but it's something. And the fact that he goes for this kind of recall here, keeps that base alive in the north, getting a base. I'm loving how Stats is playing. He's actually playing a really solid PvT.
It's kind of like prime Stats, right? If we just ignore the early game, we're like, oh yeah, this is how Stats likes to play. Obviously, Clem is still kind of getting into the spot that he wants to be. There are 28 Vikings out on the map right now. And you mentioned that Storm earlier. That was a big deal, because you see all these Vikings, they're bruised up a little bit. The key to victory for Stats is indeed spacing out those High Templars, and whenever Clem tries to clump up those Vikings to get a full volley off on the mothership or on the carriers, that's where he wants to land the Storm. And even if that Storm only connects with the Vikings for like half a second, that'd be massive for Stats. You do that 2-3 times, and there is no way that Clem wins the fight anymore, because these units do not regenerate. He needs to repair them, and you can't really repair them. I think Stats split up the mothership, by the way, and it will be interesting to keep a little eye on that mothership, because he could go for a good old recall into the bottom side of the map. And that could be very annoying for Clem.
I love what Stats is doing, though. These sprinkling High Templars everywhere, but the carriers down in the south now, and that base that was very freely mining no longer. Nice little nuke here, does get quite a few cannons and a High Templar for its troubles. Liberators are online now as well with range, but that is quite the Terran flock over there. Ghosts on the ground as well. They will make short work of these carriers if given the chance.
Yep, crazy amounts of Vikings, but Stats is just looking right now not for one fight to stand there. Stats is looking for A little bit of guiding, one storm and you disengage, one storm and you disengage. The biggest thing is obviously the Ghosts and the Liberators. They have one job here, and that is to protect all these Vikings. As long as the Ghosts and the Libs can keep the Vikings safe, Clem is going to be fine. If the Vikings get a bit overeager, they get ahead of themselves, and Stats can clip that army with a storm and do that 2 times in a row, then maybe Stats can just grab everything and A-move.
These upgrades are huge, by the way. +3 on the carriers. I mean, all of them are starting to gear up to 3 upgrades on everything. I mean, it's actually crazy. Clem did a really good job of like jump-starting himself on the upgrades as well against this, and look at that. Beautiful EMPs do land on a good chunk of this army. I don't know where the High Templars are. I don't see any purple bars in the mix. Maybe one is left over there. Does get back to safety here behind the cannons, and a shield battery overcharge as well.
I don't hate it, just to regenerate the shields after the EMP. Even if you're not battling, it is worth to start your fight with full shields again. Now, of course, there are plenty of ghosts, and Clem is probably going to try to put more EMPs, and not a tactical recall. This one used from the Nexus to the top right side. It's kind of cool what Stats is doing, where he said, like, I am not going to run into your Liberators, but Clem is very quick to react to it, knows exactly where his army is at, and I don't know if this is a fight that Stats really wants to take. The Liberators are here already. He's going to blink a couple of Stalkers forward. He gets a single lip, and that is about it.
I mean, I love the tactical play, right? Just meandering, moving, using the mothership aggressively as well. But this is not what you want to look at if you're a Protoss player. And yeah, Kevin, I saw you hide your head away from that because that was going to be juicy for Clem. But Stats does get away to safety again. Really nice use out of all these cannons as well, because they're not easy to engage, because Clem is so focused on the anti-air that dealing with the ground here, it has to use nukes to do it.
Yep, Ghosts don't really like to stand there, get in range and tank cannon shots. The Liberators obviously do nothing against cannons. The Vikings are just looking to fight carriers, and they will one-shot a carrier. Storm does land. I mean, that's -3 carriers, incredibly quick, and Clem still has 33 Vikings. That's more than enough to get in range one more time and pick up carriers one by one. And this is kind of what I was expecting. It took a little while to see peak late game TVP out of Clem here, but you look at the army movement here and you're wondering what on earth is Stats supposed to do against it. Stats had a lot of great moves. He had a bad early game. He made Clem work for it, but it almost feels that Clem kind of enjoyed it in the end. He's like, oh, I don't get to play these TVPs very often anymore. They always try to kill me before I get here. And honestly, Clem looks borderline untouchable in these games.
Yeah, I mean, he made that look easy, and it's not easy at all. He has to be so careful about all the storms that can potentially land on this army, but he was juking and jiving, even the position as well. These Vikings on that ledge kind of area, so you can't really chase him with ground, even if you wanted to. But Stats, all things said and done, he's the one with a bank still. He's still in this, even though the army's ridiculously scary. If he does switch to pure ground, those Vikings, they don't want to be fighting against that.
Can we take a look at how many gateway Stats is currently working with? Because if we want 13 and double robo is definitely not bad. So yeah, there is some potential for it. It's just that the Liberators are still very gnarly. The Ghosts are still there as well. And Vikings can of course land. Let's not pretend that they will never be useful, right? Like, oh, Stats goes Stalker Zealot now. Well, 33 Vikings on the ground band, also pretty damn good. As Stats has run out of detection, all the observers just keep on getting sniped over here. One more ops flies in range, and Clem is just throwing down scan after scan. All these Vikings have nothing else to shoot at, so these Ghosts are just permanently cloaked. And this is honestly very cool what Clem is doing over here.
Yeah, and the Vikings, they do eventually land, and they do a lot of bonus damage to Armored, but more Stalkers coming in the fray here. Clem, he's 200 supply still, but his resource bank is completely gone, and that isn't because he's not macroing or not rich, just because he's producing so many high-value units here, and Stas is putting up a damn decent fight. What is the resource loss? I'm so neck and neck between them. That's great.
Yeah, but Clem has mined so much more, and that makes it less great for Stats, right? If Stats was the one who mined a little bit more than Clem throughout the game, we'd be like, oh, okay. Over the last 5 to 10 minutes, seems that there were some moments where Stats was doing good, because obviously he did have that tactical recall to the bottom, but now Clem is firing on all cylinders again. He is going to be able to spam mules for days. Stats is on top of one of these bases immediately. He absolutely got to give it to our Korean Protoss here. Some would even call him the Protoss GOAT, as he's in the top right with Stalkers, he's in the bottom side of the Stalkers, and he's really taking advantage of the fact that he's got the slightly more mobile army. The only problem is this army will not disappear, right? So Clem might be out of position once or twice, but it is not gonna go anywhere.
By the way, I love what Stats is doing here. You see how he's slowly working on these Vikings, hoping that the anti-ground switch is coming online, which it absolutely is for Clem, but he's switching back into carriers now, which that if you do take out enough of these Vikings and soften them all up, hey, I mean, Clem could actually be in trouble at a switch like that, but I mean, they're both playing phenomenal.
Clem has 151 army supply, so even if he has a few too many Vikings or a few too few Vikings, he should always be able to make up for it. Stats has done a good job spreading out these observers, and these cannons are still making his life a little bit easier, making it more difficult for a couple of Liberators or Ghosts to really get on top of a Nexus. And yeah, that's a serious amount of carriers. We're all of a sudden back to 7 carriers, I believe. 2 more are on the way. Might be okay for Clem to repair some of these Vikings, right? Because these Vikings have been battling for a while. You look at the HP on a lot of these guys. Yeah, I think a little repair won't hurt there. Stalkers are not that cheap, by the way. Zealot run-by is something you can do forever. Stalker drive-bys, adds up real quick.
It certainly does. Like, he's been reliant on the fact that it's been just an air army for a long time, and he's been able to do that, whereas Clem, now he's got a lot of bio on the field as well, but 3 more carriers coming online. With all that bio, by the way, he can actually start punching through these cannon locations here, which maybe he's thinking of doing pretty soon, but for all intents and purposes, it's a fairly patient game. Is he going to get it? Clip! Bam! Saved.
I saw a disaster scenario there, 4 observers and a disruptor dying with all these cannons. That did not happen. Kudos to Stat. You can really see that this man absolutely still has it if he can just find himself in playable spots. And I almost feel that a tiny bit robbed, even though this game is fantastic and it's still going and there is absolutely a shot that Stats makes something out of it. If he's capable of this with a bad start in a game, imagine what Stats is capable of in this matchup if you give him a good start.
Yeah, this is already a way better showing than what I thought you'd have. Like, first game, disaster. Second game, started off like a disaster. Again, I thought it was going to be one of the shortest series we had, but here we are, 24 minutes in. Both players super close to max out, or indeed maxed out. How many carriers are on the field now? I mean, the number 13. 22 Vikings. Remember, they're pretty battered and bruised as well.
Double Storm, even though the Ghost already died, but it's all good. Yes, those Vikings are still a little bit low in HP and EMP lands, but the Storm does still go off, softening up the Ghost a little. Clem is starting to, I think, realize, like, hey, wait a minute, this is actually getting kind of scary. You have money for that? He's like, hell yeah, I've got money for that. We're going to use the battery overcharge there. I'm not totally certain what the point is of that one, because there is no army to heal up. One carrier is all by itself. That's not what you want to do, but the carrier gets saved by the battery there as it flies back to the cannons as well. And it seems like we're just going to run most of our carriers and Templars to the bottom side of the map. And then don't forget that Sets can always recall home with that Nexus, because recall is available again. Yeah,
I mean, as the map starts getting bigger and bigger, you got a Mothership online along with the Nexus, with the recalls and stuff, you can really start bouncing from one side to the other much faster than Terran can in this kind of situation. And right now, Clem still has a good bank to work with. Now he knows exactly what army comp he's up against as well, but Stats isn't giving him too much time to breathe, but that's a lot of medevacs and a lot of bio over here. Like, he won't be able to stick around here for too long, I don't think.
Yep, this is also where it gets very scary, because Terran doesn't need that many SCVs anymore. They've got all of their production facilities, they've got all of their main bases, all of their upgrades. I have no idea how that Disruptor is sneaking through the cracks. It will eventually get tagged by one of these Marauders and gets picked off. But you're not looking at a Clem anymore that's working with 120 or 115 army supply. This is 162 army supply of Vikings, Liberators, Ghosts, Marauders, and plenty of medevacs. This is incredibly hard to battle. It almost feels that standing there and fighting is pointless. Stats needs one of these running fights, right? Or chaos, a little fight here, a little fight there, with plenty of storms connecting. Clem obviously is just looking for that one big all-out engagement where he can land those EMPs and the Liberators can do their thing.
And I mean, these snipes are real damn value here. He even morphed in a lot of Archons here just to try and deal that AoE damage, but against this many Ghosts. How many orbitals are on the map as well for Clem? We have 10. So he's got perma vision all the time on everything. I just see non-stop scans going off, and Stats right now, he's really mining out what he has. He's so desperate for another base, and Clem, he feels that Stats is wounded here and hurt. He's going to start closing in on here.
Clem definitely does need to respect all these carriers, right? Because he's pretty heavy on the Marauders there. Ghosts can be good from time to time, but are not always going to be that unit that will stay alive forever. If all these carriers are able to deploy their interceptors, and with the Viking count being lower than it previously was, and a lot of these Vikings still being somewhat hurt and bruised from previous fights, Clem looks amazing here, but he needs to still respect the potential of 2 storms connecting and all the interceptors doing their thing.
Absolutely. I'm so sad for Stats right now that there's no High Templar in sight. Like, but 104 interceptors, they can definitely make short work of this army if they're all deployed. And a disruptor from north here will get a little bit of a hit here. Here a ghost die. But these Vikings, here comes the dance, and they have to avoid these Archons, avoid the Interceptors as much as possible. Both of them absolutely destroying one another. The Interceptors, they're all deployed though here, Kev. It takes out a lot of the Vikings, a lot of the Liberators as well. But Clem, how many Vikings can he get back online? I think the answer is going to be a lot, 8 at a time.
Yep, I mean, that was actually a very good fight for Stats. I'm just afraid that he's been losing economically for a little while right now. But he did about as good there as he ever could. Even without Storms clipping those Vikings, what he did have was Stalkers pushing those Vikings away. I think one Archon got his shot off, and obviously Vikings like to clump up. Archons deal splash damage. That was a really good fight. It's just not quite enough to keep on pushing. And if he cannot keep on pushing, the next time he's not going to run into 20 Vikings, he's going to run into even more Vikings, and all of them are going to be full on HP.
Absolutely. I mean, 4 Vikings at a time right now. Clem also feeling the heat a little bit here. It's down to 26 SCVs, but as we talked about, it was 10 orbitals online. Sats finally gets another game or another base up and running here, but he's running dry here, Kev. How long can he withstand the storm that is Clem over here? He's got such a high-tech army just meandering about the map.
And it's going to be so difficult for Stats to prevent these Vikings from doing their thing, where they kind of get in range, they fire one full volley of all their missiles, and then they disengage. Stats right now would love another fight where, hey, all my Interceptors are deployed, and it's even better when the Interceptors are just battling the Vikings, and we don't have to worry about 20 Marines standing underneath, or Liberators A-moving. It's just that Clem does not want to see one of these fights. Clem knows that as long as he's right on the edge, and he can fire some volleys, and he can disengage, that he is going to be absolutely cooking against the Stats that is just running low on high Templars. So Stats cannot really rely on the random Stormman running away. It kind of feels that Stats is a sitting duck over here.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall, as you would say. These Vikings, look, they smell blood in the water over here, and he's picking him apart. Granted, Stats is doing everything he can here. Battery Overcharge will help quite a lot with keeping these Stalkers alive, and he's still trying to get run-by damage on the other side of the map, but right now, Clem is just the bigger kid on the playground.
Sick game by Stats. His first series did not work out, but he did take a map in of Oliveira. I'm not sure if it's going to happen over here against Clem, as we are still battling, and Interceptors are kind of out. There are 34 Vikings, though. That is an insane amount of Vikings. You can see the High Templars coming in from the left. They are looking for one more Storm, and Clem is not going to let that Storm connect. The Stalkers blink forward. There are some Marines and Marauders still left on the ground, and Clem is actually forced to run all the way back. The last 2 High Templars were leading the charge. All the Marauders have died, but the Vikings are going to chase the carriers down one more time. Stats has a little bit of money. I wonder what he's going to do with it. Every Stalker counts here. It's just going to be so incredibly hard to ever battle near a planetary. Stats does not have the army to fight planetaries. He does not have the economy to fight planetaries.
He certainly doesn't. 9 Stalkers here. That's like one of his final warpins here, because the gas count for both of them is ridiculously low. We're almost getting to a point here where neither one of them can really get higher than 150 supply with how low the economy is, but I mean, what a game out of both these bad boys.
Yep, Stalkers are pretty good in some of these scenarios, and Stats still splitting up units in the top right side. Like, there definitely is a tiny chance, but Stats needs to properly babysit every single unit now, as EMPs are going to cover the majority of this Protoss army. Again, there will always be another overcharge. There's also one last disruptor that's going to fire a Nova forward. It does not connect with anything. Let's pick off a Liberator. I want to see that fight in the top right side quickly as we split off the carriers. That's a great play, because all the Vikings are here in the bottom side of the map, and Clem actually really needed that base. I love this carrier split off by Stats.
It's super cool, and remember, he can recall out of there. He's seen a group of the Vikings go over there to deal with, but Kevin, this is a full energy nexus over here. Say if he brings those back when the Vikings are halfway. I mean, if he does it right now and it's back over there, perfect play to Stats. He's played a great game, mate.
It is actually amazing what Stats is doing. 40 probes now against only 15 SCVs, but obviously there will still be mules for days. And I mentioned the problem of the planetary fortress. That base at the bottom side is a planetary fortress. Stalkers and Zealots don't want to fight near a PF. But Clem definitely needs to be cautious. All the Vikings have returned on, and I guess he feels that he doesn't have to be all that cautious anymore. 28 Vikings against 4 carriers. Even if a Storm connects, it should be fine, as that Nova does connect with a couple of the Marauders. starters. And at this point, I do feel that Clem is like, hey, when is this going to end? Do you ever run out of Protoss units? And I feel like we are close to reaching that tipping point, but Stats is going to activate one more battery overcharge. All the Vikings have landed though, and Vikings on the ground do great damage against Zealots and Stalkers, and that will do it. Clem wins after a 33-minute game, where he had a very good start. And this really should give people some hope for Stats, because if Stats can do this after a bad start, I said it before, Ben, but imagine if he has an okay start. Or what if he has a great start? Because that was some really good late-game Protoss play by Stats.
That was not easy, and I mean, Clem, the caliber of Protoss players that he dukes out with these days, and then to have Stats bring a totally different style, especially after the bad start that you talked about, went in with the Storm drops, he bought himself time, scattered the High Templars, got the carriers out, did the switches as well. I mean, after this first little showing here, I was all out of hope for Stats in this series, but I'm very impressed with him, man. Like, a lot of that was really cool, the Mothership usage as well. Just very, very cool series.
Game 1 was a disaster, and in Game 2 we started off with the semi-soul read, but even then he lost some probes, and he lost the War Prison with 4 Stalkers, and we thought like, alright, he's just gonna get a move. This was obviously a reasonable fight, because he had a battery overcharge, dropped the time warp as well, especially the way that he rotated his army around the map, like from minute 15 to minute 30, with some great tactical recalls, splitting up some Zealots and Stalkers. Like, Stats really played a solid game, and he made Clem work for it, as hard as any other Protoss player has made Clem work, because normally Clem on 5 bases, yeah, that's it, that's curtains, it's game over. This one, I don't think Clem was in danger of losing it, but I do think that even he was surprised at time to time where, is this getting scary, right? Like, am I a storm away from being in trouble? Am I losing one more base away from being in trouble? Stats displayed some great tricks, and he's absolutely showing us that he's got a chance in this group. He's gonna have to step it up against Bunny, against Cure, of course, as well. It's gonna be awesome. Let's hear from Clem, though, as he's on stage with Rachel.
Thank you so much. I am here.